name's Donna Chiarelli. I'm the Director of Programs and Capacity Building with the Natural Assets Initiative. I'll tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we do in a minute. I'm joined by my colleague Laura Wilkes, who's helping to support this webinar and our programs, and Patience Cox, who is our Indigenous Relationships Advisor at NAI. So Laura and Patience, feel free to say hi. I've already said who you are, but
yeah, hello everybody. Thank you for joining. I'll probably be your first point of contact if you're interested in any of these programs, so I'm happy to help in any way. Happy for any questions after the webinar, and yeah, happy to be here. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
And yeah, and my name is Patience Cox. I am a member of the Opera Similk Committee. I'm a Jameson, and have been working with NAI for the last little over almost 2 years now. But just coming in now as the Indigenous Strategic Advisor. So here to help.
Thanks very much, Patience. Yeah, I just wanted to start with NAI's land and territorial acknowledgement. We are actually a distributed team across the country. And so this acknowledgement really is more reflective of, the scope of where we're working in Canada. Physically, I am in Ottawa, which is unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory, where I'm really happy to live and work. And other NAI team members are living in other parts of Canada. So first of all, I just wanted to give you a very short introduction of the Natural Assets Initiative. We're a small nonprofit organization working across Canada. Our vision is a society that recognizes and treats nature as our most valuable asset. And our mission is to make natural asset management a mainstream practice across Canada, and for local governments and others to adopt methodologies and tools in a standard way across the country. I'll be telling you a little bit more about what we mean by natural asset management in a minute. But first, I wanted to just make sure that we all share a common understanding of what we mean by natural assets. So natural assets, and I would say that this is a fairly recognized and accepted definition of natural assets. It's in the Canadian Council for Ministers of the Environment Natural Infrastructure Framework. It's also used by other organizations as well, and it's sort of the way we define it as well at NAI. So basically, natural assets are part of a continuum of green infrastructure assets. And all of these assets that are part of the green infrastructure spectrum definitely contribute to service delivery for our communities. By natural assets, we're really referring to those intact natural areas and ecosystems that provide significant ecosystem services to our communities. So things like wetlands, including swamps and bogs, forests, meadows, grasslands, watercourses and riparian areas, lakes and ponds, even soils. So that's not an exhaustive list of natural assets, but it gives you a sense of what we're talking about. And of all of the spectrum of green infrastructure, those are kind of the type of assets that probably are providing the most significant extent of ecosystem services to our communities. Then we also have what we would call enhanced green infrastructure assets. So these are still natural, but they may have involved some kind of human constructed element. So they're usually considered part of a nature-based solution, or what we might call low impact development to help manage stormwater and support hydrologic processes and that kind of thing. So those would be things like rain gardens, green roofs and walls, bioswales, even street and park trees we would consider enhanced assets because they don't provide the same level of ecosystem service as a intact large forest would. Naturalized stormwater ponds, open spaces, that kind of thing. Then also on the spectrum of what we would still consider sort of like a low impact development solution that also helps to support natural systems functioning would be those green infrastructure assets. So things like permeable pavement, rain barrels, cisterns, perforated pipes, infiltration trenches, And so that's all part of the green infrastructure spectrum, all help to support, goals around natural systems functioning, conservation, water management, that kind of thing. And then, of course, we have gray infrastructure on the right-hand side, which is not part of the green infrastructure spectrum, really. And it's those kind of non-natural, human-made elements of our infrastructure system, like bridges and roads and parking lots and pipes, things made from steel and concrete, that kind of thing. So all of this is part of our infrastructure system. All of it is really important for us to basically function in our modern society, and so we're really focused on making sure that the left-hand side, the natural assets, are properly accounted for and managed as part of that system, because until recently, and it really hasn't been thought of in that way. So in terms of, why this is important, particularly for local governments and communities that are managing, land at a local level or regional level, is that they do contribute directly to municipal service provision. So if you think about sort of rainwater and stormwater management, a core municipal function, and drainage, forests and wetlands and riparian areas contribute significantly to that stormwater management function. As well, natural assets help to support, source water quality, and, that helps to keep the costs of water treatment low. Again, a core municipal function. They also help to support sort of, aquifer recharge and water availability, for things even other than drinking water, so emergency services and other non-drinking water needs. They also help to support natural hazard management. So things like erosion or flooding or, storm surge, sea level storm surge. Natural assets really help to provide a buffering role there. Recreation and cultural services are also core municipal functions, and natural assets provide, a significant amount of that sort of service for the community, and is very valued by the community. So these are some ways that they contribute directly to municipal services. And of course, they offer a whole range of other additional benefits to us. Forests and trees filter and clean the air. They provide access, to parks and natural areas, which also provide physical and mental health benefits. So in Canada, that's largely a provincial jurisdiction, but it's definitely those benefits happen locally. Parks and natural areas stimulate the local economy through tourism and outdoor recreational activities, fishing, hunting, hiking, boating, and of course, traditional uses as well. And of course, not last but not least, forests, wetlands, grasslands, riparian areas provide significant habitat. As I'm sure many of you know, biodiversity loss is now seen as the twin, crisis alongside climate change. And so whatever we can do to help to protect biodiversity is going to benefit us all in the long run. Finally, natural assets, of course, support healthy soils. In fact, we would even include soil as a natural asset. Supports nutrient cycling, and absolutely critical for food security. So we are relying on natural assets for everything. I'd like to also just add that, natural assets, of course, also help us build resilience to climate impacts and adapt to climate change. Climate change is already happening. It's already affecting our communities. And so basically, for example, forests and peatlands and wetlands contribute to carbon sequestration and storage, which help to contain or manage greenhouse gas emissions. They can also help to support reduced energy use through improved water efficiency. So again, that helps to contain our greenhouse gas emissions as well. Water distribution and use is one of the biggest energy consumers of municipal service delivery. So it's not a small thing. On the adaptation side, of course, natural assets help to reduce flooding and erosion in the face of increased precipitation and storms, provide shade and cooling during heat waves, impact or buffer the impacts of storm surges on natural shorelines, and of course, help to support water retention during drought conditions. So, so there's all kinds of benefits that natural assets provide. And so I'll just pause here to basically just sort of introduce the concept of natural asset management. So basically, natural asset management is, or asset management, I should say, is essentially a business process in an organization for managing infrastructure assets over their full life cycle in such a way to best manage risk and deliver services and help to kind of find those trade-offs and optimize decisions about infrastructure. That's what asset management is. It's a process. Lots of communities across Canada are now doing asset management and strengthening asset management processes in their organizations. However, most of them haven't yet started to think about natural assets as a core asset class in its own right, that also needs to be managed and protected over its life cycle, just the way we do with built infrastructure. So there are a lot of gaps, and it means that we might not be managing risks and costs of service delivery as effectively as we could be. Because as you just saw, there are so many ways that these assets are contributing to our communities and to our services. If we're not proactively accounting for that and managing it, then we might very well be exposing ourselves to risks and costs. And so that's what we're trying to do. In terms of work with local governments on natural asset management across Canada, NAI has worked with, I think, over 140 local governments on various different types of projects to try to start to develop norms and good practices around natural asset management. This report that was published in 2025, authored by Joanna Equiam at the University of Waterloo Intact Centre for Climate Adaptation, sort of did a bit of an assessment, and they estimated that maybe about 150 of Canada's 3,600 local governments are starting to identify, assess, value, and manage their natural assets using this type of a lens. But clearly we have a long way to go. And also, there's still a lot of work to be done to develop those good practices and norms. So that's our goal as NAI, is to help to kind of scale up this practice across the country. So we're doing that in a number of different ways. The first way is by actually testing these sort of concepts and ways of sort of accounting for natural assets using an asset management lens. So we've done interdisciplinary project work with over 140 local governments, and now 4 First Nations, which Patience is going to tell you about in a minute. We do things like develop natural asset inventories, which are really like a foundation for understanding the state of natural infrastructure in your community and the types of services that it's providing. We've done modeling work and ecosystem service valuations to really understand, what is the value to the community of these services that are being provided. We've worked with local governments on natural asset management roadmaps, and I'm going to be telling you about our roadmap program in a minute. Frameworks and some plans, and we also do policy work. So you'll see on the right, we recently did a policy paper with the Canadian Urban Institute looking at how natural asset management can help to support and relate to some of the federal housing supply issues that we're having in Canada, and how we don't need to kind of separate out our housing needs from good practices around protection and management of natural assets. So that's the type of work we do. Most of the work has been with local governments to date. And our capacity building work that we're doing, that I'm going to be telling you about, is largely geared towards kind of sharing some of those lessons. I do want to tell you, or I would like Patience to tell you about the work that we're doing for with First Nations, because we obviously know how important it is to be learning from and working with Indigenous communities on managing our land and water in a way that is going to be supportive of all of us for generations to come. So Patience, would you like to kind of say a few words?
Sure. I don't know if any of you are coming from a First Nation community or are working with First Nations communities, but essentially NAI has been working. They actually have 5 projects. The first project was with Treaty 1 in Winnipeg, and then there's been 4 projects in British Columbia. One with Treaty 8, and then the 2, and then my own community, Upper Similkameen, and then 2 others that you'll see the published. If you go to the website, you'll see their published reports, Camel and Malahat. And part of what it's different and the same in the sense that working with Indigenous, when NAI works with an Indigenous community, we come through the process in a different way. Primarily because in most all of the projects with Indigenous have focused on the traditional territory, which kind of flips the model in terms of in a municipality, you're dealing with a large built environment and generally a smaller green space, although regional districts in some cases can be quite large. So the idea, but with an Indigenous community, really are looking at their whole land base, and so that involves much deeper work. It also gives the Indigenous community an opportunity to incorporate their own data into these studies, and allows for a particularly cumulative effects. That's a significant piece. So there's a lot of it's very interesting work, of course. It feels really honoring to be able to see how the community, once the community starts seeing the maps and the power of the information and the data is in terms of that part of the work, creating those databases. So that's the work. Every community is slightly different. Their needs are slightly different. We're also working on some risk management that focuses a little bit again differently as it relates to an Indigenous community compared to sort of the standard risk management that a municipality or a regional district would do. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'm available to answer them. And if you want to pop questions into the chat, I'm happy to see if I can respond. Back to you, Donna.
Great, thank you very much, Patience, for that context. Before I tell you a little bit about the training opportunities that we have, I also just wanted to let you know that another key part of what we do to try to help to scale the practice of natural asset management is to support the development of standards, and to sort of develop guidance and sort of communicate those good practices that are evolving as more organizations are starting to test natural asset management. So the ones that you see on the screen here, it's an example of some of the work we're doing to try to get natural assets recognized in public accounting standards. So as some of you may know, natural assets are not currently considered tangible capital assets, and that means that they actually have no place on a balance sheet with respect to a local government's financial reporting. So really trying to help to change that. There are some local governments that are starting to put it in their notes section of their financial reporting. So that's evolving, but there's this is a really good report that sort of explains how you can start to do that, even without it being kind of officially sort of recognized as part of the PSAB reporting requirements. NAI helped to support the development of the first voluntary national standard on natural asset inventories. So that's available through the Canadian Standards Association at a very sort of modest cost of about $50, I think. So that explains sort of some of the basics, and that was developed, with a very broad kind of technical working group and meant to be very accessible for communities of all sizes and capacity. So would definitely recommend having a look at that if you're interested in developing an inventory. We also develop guidance. We recognize that, asset management and natural asset management is very much an interdisciplinary process. And so there's roles for different types of professions, including like land use planners, engineers, finance professionals. So we know that strengthening that professional guidance and practice is really important. We've worked with Engineers and Geoscientists BC to develop some guidance for engineering geoscience professionals on natural asset management. We've been delivering training for planners at various Planning Institute conferences across the country. And so that's another part of what we do. And we also deliver training directly for local governments as well, and individuals. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the current opportunities that we have. So basically, we have two programs right now, or opportunities, I guess you could say, that are specifically geared towards local governments, and it's really based on sort of good practice asset management. And these are initiatives that are, being supported by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Green Municipal Fund, and the Government of Canada through their local leadership and climate adaptation programs. So we're really pleased to be able to have the support from FCM to do these. So the Natural Asset Management Roadmap Program is geared towards local governments starting out in natural asset management, or trying to really understand sort of where they're at and where they should be going. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. We also have a 4-part workshop series. So this is a workshop series that supports local governments to scope and develop an approach to natural asset management that's appropriate for their context. So as Patience was saying, every community is unique. Well, that's no different for local governments. Local governments are different size, capacity, geography. So as well, there's a lot of kind of specificity around how they might want to approach, a natural asset management plan or something as well. So both of those two programs are geared towards individual local governments. So we work with a cross-functional group of staff in a local government. So this is, if your local government is interested in sort of developing its capacity in natural asset management, it would be for you to bring, a group of staff together to learn together and kind of undertake these initiatives together. And then we also have a natural asset management fundamentals course through Royal Roads University. And that's for individuals. It's multidisciplinary as well. So would highly recommend that if you're interested individually in learning a little bit about natural asset management and you have some professional development funding to do that. So let me give you a little bit of details about the Natural Asset Management Roadmap Program. So this one is offered to local governments for $500 per local government. And it's meant to be a high-level capacity building exercise, essentially, where we help to look at, your current natural asset management practices. Even if you're just getting started, I'm sure there are things that you have been doing. It's just like local governments are managing built infrastructure, even if they've never developed an asset management plan. So kind of look at what you're doing now, kind of the current state, and develop a roadmap together to identify some first or next steps that are practical to make progress. So we look at, 6 key competency areas that are required for effective asset management, and look at sort of where there might be areas for you to make progress. So the way that one works is first there's basically an up to 1.5 hour kind of launch meeting with your group in your local government. So basically that provides everybody with a bit of a natural asset management 101. So everybody has the same basic knowledge together to come to the roadmap workshop with. After you do that together, there's a little bit of homework for you to do. And then we bring you together for a 2.5 hour workshop with your local government. So that's where we complete your initial assessment of your current practices and your roadmap, essentially. And then basically it's up to the local government to kind of finalize their roadmap. You'll see that this is not meant to be like an intensive document or anything like that. It's pretty high level. And we can also provide some additional coaching, like if you're looking for, some resources or want to have a little bit more information about how you might want to move forward some of these next steps, we can provide some coaching as well. And so this opportunity requires, a minimum of 3 local government participants. If you have a very small community and very low capacity, or if you're if you're a small community working on asset management with another small community, sometimes communities do this as asset management work together. It could be possible for you to work on it together. So it really depends. Just you can reach out to us and we can kind of figure out whether it makes sense to do it that way if you're already sort of collaborating with other small communities. So basically for that, we will provide you some before your roadmap workshop, some support materials, basically a worksheet for you to kind of work through and answer questions on your own. And then during the worksheet, we actually will be going through those questions together and discussing the short to medium term actions to make progress. And then it's, again, like I said, it's up to the local government to complete their roadmap after the workshop. So like I said, the roadmap template is very simple. This is not, we're not expecting the project lead for this initiative to write a book. It's really, it's just so that you all develop some consensus and understanding of what makes sense to do kind of first, second, and third, and when you might do it. And then you can go back to it and sort of hold yourself to account to see whether you've actually done the things that you said that you were going to do. So we also really emphasize that, communities are at different stages of adopting asset management as well. Some are at a very, very early stage. And, this isn't meant to be a laundry list of things to do. It's really meant to be what makes sense given your current capacity and resources. Let's make this very practical and achievable. So that's what we hope that you'll come out with at the end of the process. So that's the roadmap program. The other opportunity we have right now is what we call our Nature is Infrastructure 4-part workshop series. So this is about, it's $350 per workshop. So each of these workshops is a half day. It's a 3-hour workshop. And again, it's with an individual local government that wants to work together to try to sort of make some progress on how you're going to be approaching your asset management planning. So essentially, we hope that after completing this workshop series, or depending on which area you might want to strengthen, you don't have to take the whole series, that you'll have kind of a suitable scope and approach for including natural assets in your asset management planning. This is basically our effort to mobilize the knowledge that was developed in a guidebook that we published in 2024. So the guidebook is called Nature is Infrastructure: How to Include Natural Assets in Asset Management Plans. So you'll see that, the workshops are basically like looking at some key components that are required to develop an asset management plan. And I'm going to explain each of them in a minute. So basically, like I said, 1 or more workshops may be taken depending on, your own priorities and the needs of your local government. And, for this one, you can register up to 15 staff from your local government. And in fact, we would allow more than that. Sometimes when we're working with larger communities, we've had like 20 people involved in some of the workshops that we deliver, or more. Sometimes we have 4, or 3. It really depends on the size of the local government and what's going on. So, so for this one, I'll just explain kind of what the 4 workshops are. Workshop 1 is called Defining Priority Services and Scope for Natural Asset Management. So for this one, we expect that by the end of the workshop, you'll leave with, documentation of the significant natural assets and services that are relevant for your service delivery context and priorities. You will have identified sort of some current data and information gaps that you have in natural asset management that you're trying to fill. And you'll have kind of a draft scope for natural asset management planning that's suitable for your context and management priorities. So that's workshop 1, and we would highly recommend, if you're just starting out and you don't yet have a natural asset inventory or plan or anything like that you start with this one, even if the other ones you don't want to do the other ones. Workshop 2 is called Assessing the Condition of Natural Assets. So for this one, obviously understanding condition and developing condition ratings like you might do with your built infrastructure is a really important part of the process of asset management, understanding the state of natural infrastructure. So for this one, participants will leave the workshop with a better understanding of the intent behind and approaches to assessing natural asset condition. Some clear guidance for an approach to complete a high-level condition assessment of the natural assets in your jurisdiction. And then some specific data or competency gaps that are required to undertake such an assessment in your jurisdiction. So we're not doing a condition assessment, we're helping you to develop your approach that makes sense for your organization. The 3rd workshop is called Identifying and Prioritizing Risks to Natural Assets. So this one actually is a high-level risk identification exercise with your local governments. So for this one, you would leave the workshop with some documentation of the top risks to natural assets based on a good practice risk identification exercise that we typically undertake with communities that we're working with. So this is called a threats-based approach to risk identification. And then we'll also be able to kind of identify some potential management priorities to begin addressing the medium and high risks that you identify. So this is different from a risk assessment, which is a much more comprehensive approach and might include developing a risk mitigation strategy and that kind of thing. Obviously, we can't do that in 3 hours, but this will give you a good handle of sort of what are some of the top risks that maybe you should be thinking about. And finally, workshop 4 is called Determining Replacement Costs and Valuing Natural Assets. And so for this one, participants will leave the workshop with some knowledge of the benefits and approaches to natural asset valuation. There's no standard for natural asset valuation at this time, but there are some good practices that are emerging. We've done quite a few ecosystem service valuations, and we've documented replacement costs for natural assets. So we'll be looking at some of those good practices. We'll come up with a draft approach to document replacement costs for natural assets for your jurisdiction based on where you're at and the type of information you have. And a potential scope for an ecosystem service valuation based on your local government's current needs and priorities, if that's a direction that you're wanting to take. So again, that's another 3-hour workshop. So those are the 4 workshops, and those are some of the key elements that are needed to start to think about developing a natural asset management plan. And so that's what we're hoping to mobilize with those. Finally, just a couple of words about our natural asset management fundamentals course. So basically, this is a 4-week online course offered through Royal Roads University, delivered by our executive director, Roy Brook. So it is for individuals. It's an interdisciplinary course, so you don't need any specific prerequisites to take it. The course covers core concepts, provides some recent case examples and some of the latest approaches to natural asset management. So that course costs $750. And the next session is running from February 9th to March 8th, 2026. And so I think that takes me to the end of our sort of information session. I do have some time to answer some questions, not a lot of time. I'm happy to, stay an extra 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm not sure about patience. So yeah, okay, so why don't we have a look? I'm going to pull up the chat and see if we have any questions.
We just got one question come in, Donna.
Okay.
Can the Royal Roads course be done remotely or virtually? Example from Ottawa.
It is a course done remotely, yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it is a virtual course. Yeah. Oh, one thing I didn't mention, and I don't think there's any francophones that registered today, but if there are, we do offer the roadmap program in French to francophone municipalities. That's delivered through our French program delivery partner, Cirio. So that is available. Do you have any more guidance documents in the works or plan for the future? Yes, I mean, we always have more. In terms of what there's another standard that my colleague Michelle Molnar, who's our technical program director, is currently working on, which is related to coastal resilience. And so that I think is going to be coming out in the next year or so. We also are in the process of trying to secure funding for new standards on condition and risk for natural assets. So that would be, in the next couple of years, we'd expect to see that coming out. Do our services include helping communities implement nature-based solutions? Not really, not yet. We're not really actually working on implementation right now in any of our projects, but some of our projects have led to some implementation. So.
And from the Indigenous file, there will be development over the next year to 18 months, I guess, where there would be additional support and coaching provided for the more around bringing things forward for decision making, how to, that kind of piece. Like, so how do you put together this stuff to then move forward with bringing it forward for decision making? So it's more along those lines where you're actually, but that is in the works in terms of on that side of the file, the work that I'd be doing.
Very excited. Currently we don't have any other workshops. Well, we do actually we are delivering some workshops at the various Planning Institute conferences specifically for planners. So that's going on sort of right now. In fact, my colleague Emily was in St. John's yesterday at the Atlantic Planners Institute conference, doing a mobile workshop in collaboration with Ducks Unlimited Canada. So we do have those kinds of activities going on as well.
I'll pop a link in here as well to our newsletter, which will let everybody know of any new anything new coming out of NAI. So I'll pop that in here in the chat.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope some of you might round up a group in your local governments or your organizations to work with us. And so have a great rest of your day, and thank you, Patience and Laura as well, for your contribution to today's meeting. With that, I think we will probably close.